Here we are again with Unit 2 for Art 2 or Year 10 of the MYP program. This unit focuses on printmaking. Printmaking is the process of carving an image onto some kind of surface or block and then inking that block and transferring the image onto paper, either through a printing press or through a rubbing process or through a more in-depth process. So thinking about things that are repeated over and over again led me to the global context of globalization and sustainability. Just from one block, students will be able to create an unlimited amount of prints, which speaks to them being able to put their artwork in more places, and I was hoping that that would make them think more globally, that their art could end up somewhere much farther than themselves. I also wanted, with this unit, to connect with visual culture. I chose some specific visual cultures to base each project around. But I wanted students to be aware that we're always surrounded by visual culture. It's a global language that we speak all over the globe. I also wanted them to be aware that the images we see every day can have an effect on us, can change us, if we connect with them. If we don't connect with them, they still might subtly change us, but if we connect with items from visual culture, then there'll be a really strong change. Some of the things that I wanted to focus on with this unit were big questions like, what makes art valuable? Especially looking at printmaking, where you can have a lot of copies of something, what makes one copy of a print valuable? The other big question I wanted to focus on is, how do you make yourself globally known as an artist? We look at different artists around the globe, contemporary artists, and I really wanted them to ask the question, why did this person achieve some kind of recognition and some other person didn't? What is this person that's doing that's special that makes them stand out? I learned at a training that when we write our debatable questions, some of them can directly connect with our statement of inquiry, or you can turn your statement of inquiry into a question. Once you get to the conceptual questions, you really want them to be the questions that help your students answer the debatable questions. In a debatable question, you should be able to justify your answer with some kind of data. In a conceptual question, you should be able to justify your answer with an example. So provide your kids with lots of rich examples before you ask them conceptual questions. And then your factual questions should help you answer your conceptual questions. What kind of definitions or words do they need to know in order to answer those conceptual questions? So to answer a factual question, you need a fact or a definition. To answer a conceptual question, you need some kind of example. To answer a debatable question, you need some kind of evidence. Also, at a training, learn the difference between knowledge and skills on this particular unit plan. Knowledge should be something that a scholar will know and be able to tell someone after this unit is over. So in this unit, students should be able to tell about art in the countries that I've listed. Those should be able to tell you what the different kinds of printmaking practices that we used are. In order for something to be a skill, you should be able to put it into the following statement. Using, and then state a tool, create, and then state a task. So using foam printing, students should be able to create an image of an animal. Using hand painting printing, students should be able to create a print that has specific colors in specific areas. So using a tool, students should be able to do a task. So in Art 2, I systematically have scholars go country by country through a world map. And I specifically avoid countries in Europe because so much of Art 1 and art history is based around European art. I try to pick countries that they know very little about, but not countries so obscure that nobody knows anything about. I want to be able to find some contemporary artists and some traditional art from that country. So I always have scholars create a visual world map that shows the knowledge that they're gaining from each country. They have to illustrate each country on a world map. On this specific one, I incorporated the idea that they were presenting this information to a board of trustees in order to sell their country to trustees to invest in maybe the economy of their country. I have 4 printmaking projects in this unit, and I'm going to show you pictures of examples that my scholars have done for each one of those. And then for each one of these projects, I have my scholars critique. It's not always the same kind of critique, but it will follow the 4-strand critique method, use vocabulary, and they have to justify their artistic decisions. So in our first printmaking project, we print on foam. I find foam to be the easiest to work with. You only need a pencil to carve into it. I am referring to a material kind of like styrofoam. You can buy it in like flat sheets. The visual culture item that I connect with this project is Chinese zodiac animals. So I introduce the Chinese zodiac to students. They can figure out which animal they are based on the year of their birth. And then I also introduce the concept of prepared surfaces, so they have to somehow create an interesting surface to print their image on. So here is an image that kind of relates to the dog, the ox, the tiger, the goat or ram, the rat. Here's another version of that same student's project. I usually get them to do 3 prepared surfaces, and so they turn in 3 pieces of paper to me. Here's the rabbit. And I like how this student used carrots to kind of connect with the idea of the rabbit. There's another nice rabbit. And here is a snake. I like how this student kind of repeated the spiral that the snake made with their background. The second project I do is a linoleum print. And this is when I get to introduce the concept of carving with carving tools. I also have to go over carving protocol to make sure they're safe with using carving tools. Linoleum's kind of a rubber-like material, so it's somewhat soft to carve in, and you're able to achieve some pretty specific lines with some practice. And I always get students to practice on like a used block before carving onto their own. With visual culture, I connect with the Greek zodiac in this particular project. So this one, again, is done on a prepared surface, and it's Pisces. I like that this student didn't choose their own sign. They actually chose their father's sign, and they actually gave this image to their father as a gift. Here's one for Aquarius, Capricorn. I like how this student really was strategic with their colors, like complementary colors, to achieve a really interesting kind of play between the prepared surface and the print. Here's another Capricorn. The third surface I have them do a printmaking project on is a wood surface, so like carving a wood block. I use the same carving tools that I did for the linoleum, but I talked to the students about grain and how to work with the grain or against the grain when they're carving. The visual culture that I connect with this one is fairy tales, and as I've gotten to do this project a few years in a row, I'm kind of shocked that less and less students know any fairy tales like coming into my class. It's not something that's like being pushed on them or being read to them in our kind of modern society. So a lot of them are fascinated with the fairy tales that they get to read as part of the research we do for this project. So this student decided to do the wolf from Little Red Riding Hood. And this student did the evil queen bringing an apple to Snow White. And this student did Rapunzel and kind of wove some stars into her hair and has the tower in the background. So the last printmaking project I do is a completely different process. It's an etching. They take a piece of plexiglass and they use an X-Acto knife to etch a piece into the plexiglass. Because they use plexiglass and plexiglass is clear, I have them put a picture underneath their plexiglass plate as they're carving. And I have them choose from famous photographs, or photographs that changed the world. So here's an example of one of the photographs, and then here is the etching that went with that particular photograph. Here's a photograph of the atom bomb going off, and then here's the etching that went with that. I really emphasize hatching and cross-hatching as I teach this unit as ways to show their image. Here's a nice photograph of our friend Salvador Dali. And here is the etching that a student made of that. This student had unbelievable precision and attention to detail. One student decided to go a little bit outside the box and use a poster for their image, but I think they still got a pretty strong image to use. You do have to constantly tell students while they're printmaking to put their letters backwards instead of the normal way, or things do come out flipped. And here's another. This one has beautiful hatching and cross-hatching. So the last thing I kind of want to leave with you is this unit plan is actually very long. It constitutes about 47 days. And I say 47 days, a lot of times I will teach 2 of these kind of objectives in the same day. So this might only be about 25 to 30 days long. The printmaking process is kind of an involved process, and it takes kids a while to get used to, so you have to spend a little bit more time with it than you would on painting techniques. So as I leave you today, I'll just remind you that whenever you're doing a unit plan, make sure that at the very end of the unit plan you reflect on how it went. I've done this unit plan a couple of times before, so I have some pretty thorough reflections, but if you're doing it for the first time, at least try to do the prior to the teaching reflection and then the during, and then way later you can do your after teaching. I hope you enjoyed this unit plan, and I hope you have a great day.